Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the three different phases or pathways of estrogen metabolism and how some are better than others. A lot of times, especially for women, this applies to men too, but especially for women, we have ovarian cysts, fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, and a host of other hormonal imbalances. And a lot of the time it really comes down to how our estrogen is being metabolized and how that is affecting us. Estrogen can be metabolized in three different ways, and the first way that I will be addressing soon is the best way for it to be metabolized. However, some of us have genetic SNPs that prevent our pathways, such as our NRF2 pathway, to work correctly, and this inhibits the way that our estrogen metabolizes and detoxifies. So I can't talk today. I wanted to just go through the three different ways that estrogen can be metabolized, the way metabolism works, and give you some tips on how to support those specific phases. So there are three phases, and we kind of call it like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The first one is what we call our 2-hydroxy phase. And I do have my notes here, which I will be looking at here and there to keep me on track. So the 2-hydroxy phase, or 2-OH phase, is the best way to go. And this is the way we really want our estrogen to metabolize. Estrogen goes through metabolism, and this is our chemically ideal way for it to metabolize. It goes through what we call methylation, where a methyl group is attached to the estrogen. And then it can move to the next process of elimination. So when estrogen is metabolized this way, this is a protective way. Our body sees estrogen as a carcinogen. And so when it goes through this mechanism, this is a more protective mechanism. It helps our body protect itself by leaving the estrogen in a weak form. So a way that it can't really, offend our body. It can't harm our body in any way. This pathway, the 2-hydroxy pathway, however, is most of the time not used by the body because of our high levels of inflammation or certain genetic mutations or SNPs that we have that prevent our body from using this pathway. If our body can't use the 2-hydroxy pathway, it will then move on to the 4-hydroxy pathway. This is the bad pathway. It's not, good by any means. It's not the worst, but it's not great. So this pathway also goes through methylation. However, when there is not enough cofactors, typically magnesium or glutathione, then what happens is when this pathway is running, the estrogen that is produced at the end is very carcinogenic. Because it was not methylated properly, it's carcinogenic, and it's an active estrogen. What this means is that this estrogen can recirculate the system through the intestinal system or wherever, and it can create estrogen dominance. It can lead to cysts and fibroids and form cancer cells. So it's very carcinogenic, and this pathway is typically what's used when there is genetic SNPs involved. So there's a factor we call COMT, and there's also glutathione status and NRF2 or SOD status. And when we have SNPs with these specific pathways or deficiencies in these specific antioxidants, what ends up happening is we end up with a carcinogenic active form of estrogen. The third pathway, which is the ugly, this also is not ideal, and it's pretty much similar to, it's our 16-hydroxy. This is pretty much similar to the 4-hydroxy pathway. However, the things are reversed. The pathway I just described is a 16-hydroxy pathway. The pathway I'm describing now is the 4-hydroxy pathway, which is very similar. So the two other pathways that are not great are both going to leave you with carcinogenic forms of estrogen that are active. These forms of estrogen are horrible because they increase oxidative stress in the body, and when methylation is not used in this phase 2 of this pathway, we upregulate the backup system, which is our glutathione and our SOD and our NRF2 system. But when these are not available, and we don't have enough antioxidant status like glutathione, like SOD2, then our body has no choice but to proceed through this pathway without these antioxidants, and it leaves our body extremely deficient in antioxidants. So we need to find a way to quench our our oxidation. And typically the way to do that is with things like glutathione and magnesium, which I will touch on shortly. So essentially the body manages our excess estrogen as a toxin, as a carcinogen. We need to excrete it. Oftentimes we can't because our pathways, our detox pathways are not working properly. Phase 1 bioactivation, this produces reactive metabolites that are neutralized through phase 2 conjugation, we call it, and they're eliminated through phase 3 excretion. So we have 3 phases of detoxification. I've talked about this part many times on this channel about 3 different phases of liver detoxification. So we have phase 1 and phase 2, which kind of convert fat soluble products or toxins into water soluble so that they can be excreted through phase 3 of detoxification. But within this phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 is where this estrogen metabolism takes place. And if the first phase of estrogen metabolism can't be used, the first pathway, then the other 2 pathways, the 16 or 4 hydroxy pathways, will be used, and these leave us with a very toxic form of estrogen that can trigger things like cysts and fibroids or some type of cancers, including breast cancer. So there are multiple systems that we can use, and we want to make sure that our body is using the correct system by making sure that we have good methylation and also really, really good NRF2 status. So lots of glutathione in the body, lots of SOD2. However, a lot of people have SOD SNPs or NRF2 SNPs where they're not able to produce these antioxidants and use this pathway properly. So supplementation is crucial. If you want to make sure that you are metabolizing estrogen properly, you need to take magnesium. And obviously this is not a full list of supplements that you want to take. This is something that you should be working with a practitioner on to make sure you're doing things properly. But I can tell you here that making sure that you have good oxidation to prevent this excess toxic estrogen from damaging the body and from not being eliminated is to take magnesium. I like magnesium glycinate. You also want to take glutathione, which is so important for our antioxidant status, and resveratrol. Resveratrol helps to quench this oxidative damage that's occurring from this, improper estrogen metabolism. So those are some things that I suggest. I also personally like a supplement from Pure Encapsulations called NRF2. This supports that NRF2 pathway that you might have a SNP for, or that might just not be working properly. It has things like glutathione and resveratrol in it. So those are some things that I would recommend. But like I said, there's a lot of times that you could have a genetic SNP that favors the 4-hydroxy or the 16-hydroxy pathway of estrogen metabolism. And if you have a SNP that favors that pathway, you're going to be in trouble because you won't be giving the body a chance to use the primary good pathway called the 2-hydroxy pathway. So taking magnesium helps your body to use this pathway because magnesium is used within this pathway quite a lot. You also want to take B vitamins. So there's lots of B vitamins. I suggest a B complex, but taking folate and B12, B6 is so important during the methylation cycle. I have a lot of clients who have very poor methylation, and there's a supplement from Genestra. I'll try to link everything below called Methylation, and it works really, really well to support this methylation pathway. You also want to do things like methionine and betaine or TMG. These can also help this methylation pathway. Very, very important. So either taking these B vitamins with the methionine and the betaine on its own, or taking it within a complex. But either way, very, very important. And it's going to help you have a healthy gut and also help you detoxify this excess estrogen. You also want to take anything that can decrease these cortisol spikes. So I'm just looking at my notes here to keep me on track of everything I wanted to touch on. But having a healthy blood sugar level is so important for proper estrogen metabolism and excretion. Lignans, which you can get from things like ground flaxseed, they're my favorite, you should be taking. Lignans are so important because they're going to help you inhibit what we call aromatase activity, which is where this estrogen will convert into androgens. When estrogen converts into androgens, you're going to end up with male pattern balding and testosterone excess and estrogen deficiency. So all the symptoms that come with that. So you want to support the excretion of conjugated estrogen by taking things like lignans. So taking soluble fiber can help regulate hormones. It's why I recommend it when we do seed cycling. Things like chia seed, flaxseed, super important. If you're on a keto diet, you want to make sure you're still getting sufficient fiber. You're not obviously getting the carbs from things like quinoa or buckwheat, so you need to make sure you're getting lots of fiber in. I'm a fan of diindolylmethane, DIM, and Detox from Pure Encapsulations is a great supplement because it helps promote the 2-hydroxy pathway, the proper metabolism and excretion of estrogen. So supplementing and taking DIM is really important to support that pathway. And by taking DIM, you're favoring the 2-hydroxy good pathway over the bad 4 or 16-hydroxy pathways. So this can reduce oxidation. And remember, oxidation leads to premature aging, cancer, and a host of other issues. And if you have a SNP that pushes you more towards the 4 or 16 hydroxy pathway over the 2 hydroxy pathway, then you can take DIM and the lignans that I mentioned and the soluble fiber, the B complex, the methionine, and the betaine. I also would suggest that you take sulforaphane. So there's a supplement from Metagenics. There's one called Estrofactor and one called Sulforaclear. Both of these are great to help clear out this bad estrogen that's formed from using the bad pathways, and it helps push it out of the body before it can cause damage and oxidation. And they act very similar to the DIM and Detox supplement that I'm just mentioning here. So I'll try to link, everything down below. I know that this video is all over the place, but I just wanted to explain to you the different ways that your body will metabolize estrogen and why you might end up with this estrogen dominance or toxicity when it's just your body metabolized estrogen the wrong way. Now it's recirculating the system as a toxin and triggering fibroids, cysts, and a host of other estrogen dominant issues. So you want to be able to excrete it by taking some of these things that I recommended. Curcumin and green tea also influence the estrogen receptor alpha and beta, which are going to help improve the way that estrogen is produced and binded in the body. So they're also antioxidants and anti-inflammatories and are great if you have genetic SNPs, again, that favor the bad pathways over the good. Okay, last thing is I want to talk about calcium D-glucarate and also SOD. So SOD's a very potent antioxidant. It upregulates the phase 2 enzymes that I talked about earlier. And also calcium D-glucarate is another great supplement to take if you feel that you are using the wrong pathway and that you have estrogen dominance and cysts and things like that. Probiotics are also always great to add into as they help to manage the estrogen levels in the gut. Lignans and fibers are great, like I mentioned earlier, for elimination of estrogen in the gut. There's a lot of estrogen there in the digestive system. And lignans and fibers will help feed good bacteria too. So those are always a good idea. So I'm gonna just kind of end the video here. I think I've gone through all my notes. I'm just looking at them here. I think I've gone through everything. So I'm going to try to link everything that I mentioned in the description box below. This video, again, is a very random spur of the moment video. The reason why I wanted to film this was because I had quite a few people asking me about, whether or not they should be taking DIM and why they might not be metabolizing or detoxing estrogen well. And you know that you have estrogen issues, again, if you're having cysts or fibroids or, lumps in the breast, things like that, weight gain around the abdomen, all that kind of stuff. And it's probably because your body is using the wrong pathway, either due to genetics or not enough antioxidants. So you need to favor the antioxidant pathway, the 2-hydroxy pathway, by taking things like glutathione and resveratrol, lignans and fiber, and DIM. These are going to help your body use the right pathway. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or confusion, put them in the comments and I'll try to get back to everybody. I hope that didn't confuse you further, but this video again was just kind of an all over the place video. I kind of wanted to vomit out some information to you guys so you have a little bit more understanding as to how estrogen is used and how the 3 different pathways work and why your body might use one pathway over another and why one is good and the other 2 pathways leave you with carcinogenic estrogen. That is what's causing a lot of the symptoms that you have. So I hope I cleared some things up. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I will talk to you guys in my next one. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and give me a follow on Instagram. Bye.